Kevin, I have a good question for you.
Let's hear it.
How many spare tires do you have in your trunk of your car?
One.
Why don't you have four? Because you have four tires on your car when you're driving, right?
That is wonderful. I've never really thought about it, but I suppose reality is the odds that I hit 4 nails at the same time and would
Pretty
also
unlikely.
not be able to have,
Pretty
access.
unlikely,
Pretty
right?
unlikely,
right?
yeah.
Okay, I know it's a dumb joke. The reason I'm asking you this is that time over time, we will have a client or a prospect or somebody that just has an exorbitant amount of cash sitting in a checking, sitting in a money market, and that's maybe their emergency money. I never can grasp why you would have so much cash sometimes in an account. Let's talk about that, because what would be the right way to really guide someone listening to this right now, a client? What's the right way to guide someone that has a whole lot of cash? What are some good options that they could really take advantage of outside of just stashing their cash away?
Sure. So the way we think about this with clients is cash is important to have available. It's the most liquid asset there is. We want to have good liquidity and access to cash. What we need is enough cash to get us through kind of that rainy day fund. So maybe 3 to 6 months, depending on your facts and specifics, of expenses, if in the event of a job loss or other unexpected surprise comes up. Beyond that, it's planning for, do I have a big planned expense coming, home renovation in the next 12 months, major investment in a business, other things. Mm-hmm. Once you get past all of that, cash to me really is not an investment asset. It is there to spend. Right. And so once we've accumulated beyond those needs I just mentioned, and you shared a few as well, keeping assets tied up in cash, there's an opportunity cost to that. Mm-hmm. And so even when held in a savings account that's interest bearing, over time, it's really a question of, is that interest actually resulting in a real return? And by that, I mean in excess of inflation.
Right.
Compare that to other investment assets, stocks being one, or even bonds, which have a positive real expected return. Mm-hmm. And so again, the longer that anyone holds cash, there's really an eroding or diminishing value to it.
And you said, opportunity cost. Just for those that might not really understand that, define that just if I was a second grader.
Sure.
Tell me what that means.
If you've got, if you're holding $100,000 of cash above and beyond any need that you have, let's say that is going to have an inflation-like return at best. Over the long run, data would tell you that it's actually going to lose value against inflation, even in a high-yield savings account. But for sake of argument, we'll say that it keeps up with inflation. Compare that to stocks. Broadly speaking, over the long term, stocks have historically averaged 6 to 7% of real return, so over and above inflation. And so looking at a 7% return over the course of 10 years, that's roughly expected to double in real purchasing power. Right. So sitting on that excess cash reserve over a decade, you had the opportunity cost, or you gave up the chance to double that asset. Over shorter terms, again, there's still just compounding benefit of investing. And so whether that's in stocks would be best positioned for long-term growth. If we're really looking at having a bit of an intermediate type of fund, so we talked about cash for short-term needs and expected costs, but maybe let's say you've got something on the horizon 3-5 years from now, that's a great place that bond funds can be used. So looking at bond funds, provide more stability than stocks. They're far less volatile. Mm-hmm. The longer term expected return of bonds as compared to cash has more to a 1% real return as opposed to a 0 or in reality negative real return with cash. And so parking money in bond funds allows you to get some of that growth while still minimizing volatility.
Right. And I mean, if you had to just tell somebody generically, what do you think is a good number for a cash reserve? I mean, again, you can go down any rabbit hole and find how many spare tires should I have in my trunk, 1, 4, 2. But what do you think for the average person? What do you think a good number? If somebody just had to say, just generically, what do you think a good number of months in reserve cash would be? And then anything outside of that maybe put to work.
Sure. I think a reasonable starting point is about 6 months of expenses, and then that's going to adjust based on your factors. And so factors that are specific to individuals. If you're a dual income household, for example,
Right.
if one spouse loses their job, the other spouse likely still has their income. So that's a positive factor in terms of your risk profile. Might be appropriate to reduce the emergency fund that you have. And similarly, if W-2 stable salaried employees versus commission-based, or a business owner, on the other hand, maybe a very successful business owner, but subject to volatility. So that's an example. A lot of business owners we work with, maybe they do hold closer to a year of cash. And so looking at those factors, how stable is the income, how diverse is the income, how many sources of income, that sort of thing can slide. But I think a reasonable starting point, roughly 6 months.
Okay, and I think that's reasonable. There's also that factor of what helps a person sleep at night too. And to your point, having a self-employed business owner, maybe they're a seasonal business and it jumps around a little bit. It's a little bit easier to have that extra cash sitting there. Anything outside of that, though, putting to work, even in a conservative manner, makes a lot of sense, right? You can outpace inflation. You can at least be earning something outside of any speculative, checking account or any. CDs have always driven me crazy. I was in the banking world years ago, and it was always funny because somebody would say, well, I'm just using this. I was getting a 6% CD. How many months was the CD? Well, it's an APY. It's an annual percentage yield. So you got to divide how many months you're actually having that CD.
Sure.
So you would have a 6% CD, but you'd only be holding it for 3 months. Well, guess what? You're only getting 1.5%. You're not getting 6%. And so even that is a bit of a shell game for me sometimes. It's a little surprising to see that can really be very confusing for folks.
It can be confusing. CDs can be a appropriate vehicle, but oftentimes the first time when you move money into a CD, you're getting a bank's highest promotional rate, and it does not automatically renew at the highest rate. And so that's a real risk that, in the example you gave, let's say 6% may have been applicable a few months back where that was out there. Those oftentimes, particularly in an environment where interest rates go down, those are not renewing evergreen at that same percent.
Exactly.
And the other thing about CDs to be aware of is, while they are liquid in terms of that you can redeem them at any time, you're foregoing the interest gained. And so you compare that to other options, whether it's a money market fund, for example, that does accrue cash on it, or interest, on a daily basis, or again, bonds, stocks, other vehicles where there's perhaps more liquidity than I'll say semi-liquid investment with CDs.
Right. And I think the big picture is with Plancorp, we're actually starting with a planning first method. That's how we look at things. So we're not diving into investments first. We're not looking into cash first. We're looking at the big plan and the big picture, and put this big umbrella over someone's life, right? And so based on that planning, that's really going to help define how much cash is needed, and then couple that with, okay, what's going to help you sleep at night, because we want to make sure our clients are also comfortable. But the plan is all based, the cash plan really starts with our planning, right?
That's right. Our meetings cover a very wide variety of topics. No two meetings are the same. The one common thread through virtually every meeting is cash planning. Let's start with, how is cash? How are things? What do you have coming up from an expense standpoint? That's covered in every one of our meetings. The reason for that is really this bigger picture, which is let's nail down, how much cash do you have? How much cash do you need to set aside? And what do you have coming up that we need to cover? Once we've covered all of that, any excess cash should often be moved into an investment portfolio, or vice versa. At times, clients explain what they have coming up, and then what we don't want to take excess risk in the market if we don't need it, or if we have a known expense coming up. So having that conversation helps us understand, how much cash should you have, and let's get you there, whether that's investing excess cash or whether that's generating cash from a portfolio.
Do you feel like when you talk with a brand new client and you're going over the planning piece and you're going over things like this might be the first time they've actually had structure to their overall financial plan and saw a visual picture of what their puzzle looks like, to their, up to that point, it might have been just a bunch of pieces, but now you're kind of putting a big picture together for them. Do you see a lot of clients that are like, wow, I I didn't really realize I had so much cash that I could have put to work, because sometimes that hindsight is 2020 and you see what you should have maybe did a year ago, but it's so much better than being 2 years from now and making that decision, right? So how do you feel about that when you actually have a client in front of you and they're like, aha?
It's funny you say that. One of my favorite things is when you can tell a client has never really aggregated everything that they own, not just cash, but all of their accounts, oftentimes with cash, saying, we didn't even really stop to think we have 6 checking and savings accounts, right? One spouse maybe has 1 or 2, and then they have a joint account, and then the other one. And for some couples, there's reasons why they like to have personal accounts and a joint. That's fine. But oftentimes, just the value of seeing everything in one place, it's hard to describe how much value that in and of itself provides. And then when you start looking at total cash, for example, of well, if we've got 50,000 in this account and 40 here and another 60 there, and all of a sudden nobody realizes, wow, we really do have $300,000 or $400,000 in cash. To your analogy about the 4 tires, it's like saying, well, if we have 7 cars, we would be covered 4 tires on all of these. Why are we doing this?
Why are we doing this? Yeah.
And so it's a really neat moment when even some of the basic planning, before we even really get to the planning, we're just aggregating facts, the value that provides. Yeah. And then that makes, not only is it interesting to us and to clients, but makes the ability to make more informed investment decisions by having the full suite of facts.
Definitely. I mean, my time here at Plancorp, that's what I've seen, is that planning first piece really just drives home a lot of moments where a client's like, wow, this is nice. This is actually, I'm getting organized, I'm getting disciplined. I have some items now that we're going to implement, and moving forward, a lot of comfort, comes from that. So
that's right. It's really, you mentioned structure. It is providing a framework and a structure that we are here to continue to work with clients and provide that support. We also empower clients to better understand their assets and help them feel empowered to, in between meetings, to understand, okay, I got an extra bonus check or extra income came in. It takes out the, how do I think about this? What do I do? Sometimes there's, kind of paralysis by analysis of trying to figure out what to do.
Yes.
When you've got a plan in place, you know that the next excess cash that accumulates in the account, we're going to do this.
For those that are listening right now, it's like if you did have interest in meeting one of us and having these deeper conversations, it's pretty easy to do, right? We just book a discovery call. We book a call, just have a quick conversation over the phone, or even a meeting in person, and talk about these things. I mean, there's no commitment, and there's definitely no sales pressure here ever. It's a professional perspective. You just see what we can do and if maybe we're a good fit. So I think that's a great opportunity for anyone out there right now. If they're thinking about it, definitely contact Plancorp.
Absolutely. We'd love to talk.
I'd love to talk.